Well, most people have seen pictures of the Sphinx,
Yeah. What is
even
it?
if they haven't been there. It's one of the largest man-made structures in the world. The body of it is actually made of natural limestone, but the head has been carved, and it is reputedly that of the body of a lion, and the lion used to be like a royal animal for the Egyptians, and it's just got into our subconscious that it is a lion, but we have never thought it looked like a lion, and when you go there and you look at the shape of it, you think this is wrong. This is not a lion. The body is far longer. Lions are very muscular in their shoulders, and their haunches stick up when they're couchant, which is what the word is for an animal lying in that position. And so Anubis came into our vision. We could see him.
So it was just a kind of an intuitive moment.
Both of us had this happen simultaneously, that when the first time we saw the Sphinx, we were astounded because there were three things wrong. First of all, it's a huge thing the size of an ocean liner with a tiny pimple for a head.
Yeah.
That's all wrong, because the Egyptians were very big on proportion. And this is very out of proportion, so that was clearly wrong. Then, we'd always been told, and who are we to disagree with what they say, that it was a lion with a man's head. But there was no lion there. And so we thought, we clearly lack an ability which most people in the world have, which is the ability of seeing lions.
We thought we were getting it wrong, and then we decided to look into this, and it led to our reading old manuscripts and accounts of other people who had been, and then it led back beyond when there was any written word about the Sphinx to the fact that it actually used to be an enormous crouching Anubis who was the guardian of the underworld or the netherworld, guarding the Giza plateau, the entrance to the underworld, which is a very ritualistic place.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen so many pictures and statues of Anubis that we instantly realized that was Anubis. And it had its head mutilated and recarved. And it's got the straight back. You know, lions just don't look like that. And so the third thing that was wrong when we saw the Sphinx for the first time was, what's it doing way down there in a hole in the ground? If you've got the largest stone statue in the world, surely you want to flaunt it. You put it on a high place where everybody can say, oh, God, look at that, it's the largest stone statue in the world. But no, nothing like that. It's hidden down in a pit. Well, that's all pretty bizarre. Okay, so its head, or what's left of its head, is sticking up. But why would you have the world's largest stone statue sitting in a hole in the ground? It's all wrong. So there had to be explanations for these things, and we eventually ended up trying to figure out what those could be. And that's why it took 10 years to write the book, get all the information. There have been many suggestions since the 60s, when Lubitsch first published in 1961 the observation that there appeared to have been signs of water erosion on the Sphinx, that there could have been what's now known as ancient rain. Ancient rain is older than modern rain. But the erosion, which we would be the first to agree is clearly there, we have now discovered had a different cause. It was water, yes, yes, but not ancient rain. And
was it ancient water?
It wasn't even ancient water. Well, it was
all to do with the flooding of the Nile. But tell him about the water theory.
Yes. Well, you see, Egyptologists are always saying that the Sphinx is never mentioned in the ancient Egyptian texts, and how could that be? They've got this great thing, the Sphinx, and they never talk about it even once. Well, the reason for that is that they were not talking about what we think it is. They were not talking about a lion with a man's head, because it didn't exist. They were talking about what did exist, was a giant statue of Anubis. And it's mentioned in the pyramid texts many times, the giant Anubis. Twice it's even described in the pyramid texts as being beside a causeway, which the Sphinx is, at Rostal, which is a part of Giza. It's all very specifically there. But going back to the water erosion, and Olivia asking me to tell you about that, we looked into the history of the flow of the Nile, and people find it difficult to grasp it these days because since the Aswan Dam was built, you don't get the inundation anymore. Yeah. It used to be throughout thousands of years of Egyptian history that for 3 months of the year, the whole of Egypt was flooded by this inundation of the Nile, and then it receded, and you waited 9 months, and it all came back again. This inundation brought all the silt, which made the agriculture possible, and so on. Well, we discovered that the Nile used to be further to the west in the old days, but that even up until pretty much modern times, the inundation brought the water of the Nile very close to the Sphinx. And I think I worked out in the book that in the 17th century, the distance reached could have been run by a track star in 22 seconds. So that's pretty close. But in the Old Kingdom, it was right up there at the edge of the Sphinx Temple and the Valley Temple, which are the two temples next to each other in front of the Sphinx. And so what we began to investigate, because we had some special access to the Sphinx Temple and those locations, was how the water was led from the inundation of the Nile through the corridor between the two temples into the Sphinx pit, and then sealed off by sluice gates to create what we call the Sphinx moat. And I photographed all the evidence of the bolt holes and the sluice gate traces and the counterweight traces in the stone, which have subsequently been covered over by this terrible thing which they call in Egypt restoration. But I fully photographed everything before it was saved for the tourism trade.
They weren't particularly noticeable, but I remember seeing these little channels and strange shapes carved into the rock and saying to Robert, "What do you think these are? They look like little drains." And it's only by being there and letting yourself do some lateral thinking that you get to realise this is something much bigger than it looks. This was
the power of the
put here
imagination.
for a purpose.
Yeah.
What was that purpose? And you know that there was a ceremony of going round in a boat for the pharaoh after he had died, and they found these huge boats which are now in a museum near the pyramids. And there's very much the mythology of the boat and the magic of going round 3 times and entering the underworld and the netherworld region.
Which, of course, is in Anubis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's the guardian of it.
And Anubis is, for people who don't know what Anubis looks like, he looks like a jackal. So he's a bit like a greyhound, but with pointed ears and a long tail.
I find it a very beautiful image.
And
I've got Anubis on my shelf, and we'll have to come back to Anubis a little bit more after the break. But for those people who want to see some more pictures of this, Robert and Olivia have very kindly done a website, which is the Sphinx Mystery.info, isn't it?
Yes.
www.sphinxmystery.info, where you'll see lots of colour pictures that they've taken and that they've collated. Because most of the ones in the book are in a sepia colour, but the colour pictures are on the website. It's well worth a look. Some of these pictures just tell the entire story. I mean, you just have to look at Anubis overlaid onto the Sphinx, and it's all there. It's fantastic. So join me after the break when we'll be getting into a little bit more about Anubis and the Sphinx of Egypt.